Hold on. For a hot second. What's up, everybody? This your boy live and direct and full effect to A32. Y'all already know how Jimmy J Smooth do. Uh, I just wanted to do a live stream on Joe Jackson, Michael Jackson's father, um, because there's a lot of people that really don't understand Joe Jackson from a real point of view, I should say, from a realistic point of view. Um, usually I don't do live streams. Uh, Usually I don't do live streams close to Reek's podcast, but you know what I'm saying. Nevertheless, hey, you know, brother got to do what he got to do. So, first of all, rest in peace to Joe Jackson, better known as uh, Joseph Walter Jackson. He was born in Fountain Hill, Arkansas on July 26, 1928. Now, I'm going to be reading from Wikipedia a little bit, and then I'm going to throw in some of the stuff that I actually know about Joe Jackson that is very verifiable. So, for the most part, I'll be reading from that, and then I'm going to uh, my point of view as well on top of Wikipedia. But and there's a few things I didn't know about Joe Jackson myself, so just bear with me. Now, Joe Jackson was born to Samuel Jackson uh, in in 1928. This year would have been his 90th birthday. He was also born to Samuel and Gail. I mean, Crystal Lee King or Crystal Jackson. Uh, he was born in an area called Fountain Hill, Arkansas. Now, at some point during that time, they moved a little closer to what is now called Forest, Arkansas. Um, they moved a little bit closer to Forest City, Arkansas. They didn't stay in Fountain Hill, Arkansas, from what I know. You know what I'm saying? They moved a little bit closer to Forest City, Arkansas, which is not too far from the Memphis area. Shout out to whoever's in the chat room, one of the handful of people. I know a lot of people are doing live streams and stuff like that, and that's all good and all fine. One of my favorite guys is doing a live stream right now. They moved a little closer to Forest City, Arkansas, uh, somewhere around that timeline. And a lot of Joe Jackson's what's up, what's popping, what's dropping, Zeke? Just chopping up about Joe Jackson. It's gonna be a long one. It could be a long one. It could be a short one, depending on how quick I get this out. But I want to assimilate this information as clearly as possible. But I surely appreciate you, my brother from England. And this is and that brother right there is really dedicated to my live stream, man. I've been going hard on your boy in boxing, but hey, it's just boxing. When they take the gloves off, it's gonna be all good though. But appreciate you in the chat. But you know, Joe Jackson is actually in the Black Hall of Fame up in Arkansas because he spent his first 12 years of his life in Arkansas. And um, the reason why a lot of Joe Jackson's background in terms of being an A1 ass kicker actually came from his father, Samuel Jackson. Samuel Jackson was a university professor. Um, don't know which university he was a professor at, but he was a professor. Some reports say he was a school teacher. We just know he was in the education business. That much we do know. This is very verifiable. And Catherine actually written a book about the Jacksons. And hold on for a second. I sure forgot to tell my boy. that I'm actually on. Appreciate your patience as well, brother Z. Let me get my boy in the chat as well. Um, Live. Yeah. So yeah, I'm getting back to it now though. But Catherine Jackson actually written a book about Joe, and he described his childhood. And the Jacksons didn't have a lot of friends. He didn't have a lot of friends growing up because he was in an old country town. So, with that being said, um, his parents, he was the oldest of four or five children. I'm not sure how many brothers and sisters he had. I knew he had a band with one of his younger brothers uh, back in the day, and that didn't work out too good for them. Of course, people know about the steel plant, but after after his parents divorced at the age of 12, you know, he ended up moving to Oakland, California, and then during that time he was an amateur boxer, and then he would end up taking his talents all the way to uh, East Chicago. He would end up taking his talents to East Chicago, and would end East Chicago / Gary, Indiana. When he did that, uh, that's when he had to start providing for his mother ultimately. And he didn't even finish high school. Let's just put this out there. Now, he was planning on going professional boxing, but he ended up having to scrap those plans to take care of home. And then he would end up meeting a woman. He would end up getting married uh, at a young age as well. I think around 19, I think 1920 years old. And that didn't work out. That was a very, very short marriage per per se. And after he get his divorce, he would ultimately end up meeting a 17-year-old Catherine Jackson. When he met Catherine Jackson, uh, they immediately got married. Uh, not too far after that. And in 1950, January 1950, they would end up uh, purchasing a small two-bedroom house on 2300 Jackson Street, uh, of course, in Gary, Indiana. And they had their first child months after that, Reby. And he was still employed at the steel plant, but he was still trying to become a professional boxer to support his family, and a to go along with being a full crane operator. Well, that didn't work out too well. So he ended up becoming a guitarist for the Falcons. After he became a guitarist, I think he's in here. I don't know if he's talking or anything, but I did shoot him a. Let me do that again because I told him I was going to put him on stream. Yeah, somebody else is probably in the chat, but I'm not sure. You know, but I'm gonna send the link out to people once the chat is finished and stuff like that. But I did tell him I'm on. He should know because he can just click on my YouTube page as well. Well, but yeah, what ended up happening was he was still working at the crane factory, and he tried to become a professional boxer. That didn't work out. He tried to become a music guy and get a recording deal, but they ultimately broke up. And um, You know, he ultimately had to scrap those plans as being a musician, and it wasn't until, of course, uh, it was Jackie who broke his guitar, uh, as you saw in the actual film, in the actual Jackson Five, in the actual Jackson Five thing, and Jackie Jackie got a real big ass whooping when he did that shit. Now, the formation of the Jackson Five came as an accident, if for those who don't know, because a 4-year-old Michael Jackson, yeah, Jackie broke his guitar. It was, I don't know if you, I know, have you ever seen the Jackson Five, the Jacksons biography? Yeah, he broke his guitar. He broke the strings on. He didn't break it. He broke the strings on the guitar. He didn't break it as in broke it like Jimi Hendrix. He broke the strings on the guitar and he gave the kid a real big ass whooping. Yeah, yeah. So he ended up breaking the strings on his guitar, and that was all she wrote, for him. So at that point, uh, yeah, yeah, it was an honest mistake. But he told. Here's the thing: Joe told his children not to use to play his guitar. I don't think the movie went into that, but Joe told his children don't touch his guitar, and somebody broke the strings on his guitar, and he whooped Jackie's ass about that. It went past an honest mistake. It was more like, shit, you fucked up my guitar, and now you gotta play this motherfucker. That's kind of how it was. So you know, hold on. No, it was Tito. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting the two guys mixed up. It was Tito who broke the guitar. Sorry about that. I always get those guys mixed up. You didn't know about the movie. Okay. I think it's on YouTube somewhere. It was Tito actually. I'm sorry. I had to cross reference some material on my own. But it was more like he told them not to fuck with his guitar, and Joe whooped ass about that. And you know, it he knew they had talent at that point. I don't know when the formation. Hold on, let me see when the formation started. The formation started. They were active in '64. Yeah, the actual Jackson Five. Okay, hold on. Yeah, he caught Tito breaking his guitar, and that's how it started. Yeah, yeah, and ultimately, a young Michael Jackson would ultimately end up joining the group. And how he actually how Michael Jackson being a singer ended up was an accident. A lot of people tend to forget that. From my understanding, when he had the older three brothers, because Marlon and Michael are right at the same age. One is a Pisces, one is a Virgo. You know what I'm saying? But Michael was singing around the house at 4 years old, and he ended up taking them on tour a few times. Now he wasn't officially a part of the group, but he did come in and sing. Of course, Jermaine was the lead singer in the early formation of the Jackson Five, which were the Jackson Three. Because Marlon was too young and Michael was a little bit too young, and then Michael's voice started to mature for a 4-year-old, going on 5 years old, and pretty much that's how your Jackson Five got started. You know, and this part of the story I'm not reading for Wikipedia at all. You know what I'm saying? This is facts right here. He was walking around the house and started singing. I don't even think the movie even went into that. Because believe it or not, Michael was supposed to be the last child. what ended up happening, because what happened was when Catherine had Michael, and when she had Michael, she wasn't supposed to have any more children, according to the doctor. So when Randy came out, or Randall Jack came out, that was like, oh, what the hell? You know what I'm saying? And Janet came out, and it was like, oh, another shot, another surprise again. So she had two more kids after that, because she had a miscarriage with Marlon, with Marlon's twin, excuse me. Marlon was supposed to be a twin, and one of them didn't make it. Marlon made it, but the other twin didn't make it. And what ended up happening is when she had Michael, I think she went through a bad operation. One of the family members could actually vouch for me on this, but from my understanding, Michael was supposed to be the last. From what I know, Michael was supposed to be the last child in the family, and Randy ended up becoming born, and then Janet ended up pops out. So it was like, wee. So Joe started taking what is now the Jackson 5 around tours and stuff like that. And they made second place several times around that time frame, because in the movie, it doesn't show them all the competitions they went to. It showed them, in a movie, you don't get a whole full biography of something. So Joe was taking them to all types of talent shows. They would get money here and there to support the household and stuff like that. And they made second place several times, and Joe Jackson just got tired of them making second place. He was like, the Jackson 5 don't make second place, we make first place. And so ultimately that would end up happening. Yeah, most definitely. Shout out to Janine Foster. Much love to you. Much love to you. So Joe would ultimately get them in a first place competition, because they were going around in the Chitlin circuit. And as they called it back in the day, they would go around in the Chitlin circuit. And the Chitlin circuit, they were getting a lot of money off of these competition, because, you got first, second place, $100, you got third place, some nigga trinkets here and nigga trinkets there. So when they finally got their big break, they would end up ultimately signing with Motown. Now, before they signed with Motown, they were signed to a record label called Steeltown Records, and I'm reading back from the Wikipedia strolls before I would ultimately end up going. They ultimately end up going to Motown, and then Motown caught wind of them, and then All She Wrote. But the thing with Joe is he always protected his boys. Even if he had to beat their asses. You know what I'm saying? And some of the whoopings that they got was extreme. I'm not even gonna lie on this, man. Some of the ass whoopings they got is extreme, but let's go here. Even though Joe Jackson was the main disciplinarian, Joe Jackson wasn't the only disciplinarian, because what a lot of people forget, Catherine was whooping ass too, just like Joe. Now, she was the more docile of the two, but those children was getting strict ass whoopings from fucking Catherine as well. And this is what is not put out there in the forefront. People just look at Joe Jackson, the toughness of a Leo, what his sign is. He's a Leo, and every Leo I know is a hell of a parent. They're good parents, but they'll whoop your ass. You'll get ass whoopings from Leos that you can't even forget, because my grandma was a Leo. And one of the worst ass whoopings, I got a worse ass whooping from my grandma than I did my mama, and my grandma only had to whoop me one time. You get whooped by your grandparents, all they have to do is whoop your ass one motherfucking time. Oh yes, whoop that ass. Those Leos will whoop your ass. Anybody that had a Leo parent, a Leo uncle or auntie, they didn't, and you got an ass whooping by them, that's an ass whooping you remember, goddammit. Yeah, but he gets the ass whoopings from his father. But people sleep on Catherine's ass whooping. Catherine was the what her ass whoopings was just as bad. People people forget about that. People dismiss the fact that Catherine was kicking ass too. Not at the rate that Joe was, but Catherine, you didn't want no ass whooping from Catherine. And if I'm not mistaken, the book goes into that. I read bits and pieces of the book. You know what I'm saying? I didn't read the entire book. You know what I'm saying? So Catherine was an A1 ass kicker too. Don't think because that woman is cool and docile and you saw the Jackson movie, she was like, don't hurt him, Joe. Man, look, she's a Jehovah Witness, first of all. And second of all, she's a country girl from Alabama. And them country motherfuckers will beat the shit out you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. And the thing with Joe is Joe believed in his children. He took a lot of risks. He made sure those kids had the best equipment, the best drums, the best bass, the best guitars. I mean, he made sure. Yes, thank you, Janine. People forget that. People think because Joe, with his Leo mentality, they think that they think it was all him, but that was like a good cop, bad cop uh dynamic in the household. Cause she would whoop your ass too now. Don't that woman is an Alabama chick, man. Yes, perfectly put there. You know, perfectly put right there. But Joe, on their way to success, he took a lot of chances. In one part of the Jackson 5 movie, she was like, we need to pay the house, no, we need to pay the rent or something like that. Yeah, yeah, this was in 92. The Jackson, hold on, let me do my little nigger research. Hold on for a second. The Jackson family book, because she wrote the book and then they remade it into a film. And if I'm not mistaken, Suzette DePasse, who was the Motown executive for a long time, had something to do with the book. Yeah, I'm trying to look for the biography that they had. The Jackson Dream. Okay, it was an NBC bio. Just give me a no ABC. Okay, okay. Yeah, Suzette DePasse was, and they actually had one of the Jacksons in there. They had one of the Jacksons in there. Hold on. They had one of his children. They had one of those guys' kids in there. Yeah, and then they talk about the inaccuracy. Yeah, in the movie they talk about the inaccuracy in Wikipedia. Yeah, but I think you can find it on YouTube somewhere. But it's pretty. It has its accuracy, and then it has its concept for the screen. There are certain things that it was meant to be on the screen and stuff like that. When 5-year-old is shown seeing climb and envy out, each of the family, including Joseph, is in attendance. The real life Joseph Jackson was working at the still while he performed this, and Joseph's father instead viewed the performance with the family. Okay. Yeah, and this kind of inaccurate too on Wikipedia. He actually heard Michael singing around the house. What the hell is they talking about? See, that's the reason why I have to. That's the reason why. What's up with Latoya? Talking about crazy as cat shit. Bleach skin Toya Jackson. Yeah, she was crazy as cat shit. She threw Joe under the bus, but she came back and corrected that. Yeah, but she's crazy as hell. I have to be honest with you on that. And yeah, yeah, because I'm looking at the Wikipedia link, and he said his uncle heard him rehearse. That's not true at all. He heard a 4-year-old Michael singing around the house, and he put his ass in that group basically. Shit, because he's been performing with them since around right around that time. So that's the reason why I go with Wikipedia to a certain degree, and I go with what I know for a fact. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but Joe took a lot of risk with those kids, and without the risk that Joe took, they wouldn't have been successful as the way they are. And it would help Katherine Jackson. Yeah, and I actually have some Jacksons in my family, believe it or not. Now I'm gonna say this. I don't know if there's a relation there because when his family ended up settling in Forest City for that short time, there were 3 sets of Jacksons, and I have a cousin, a first cousin named Glenda Jackson. I don't know if she's still around, but there was only 3 sets of Jacksons in that part of Arkansas, uh, in that particular side of Arkansas. So there's a possibility I'm gonna do a real extensive research. Not saying I am before y'all jump the gun. You know what I'm saying? So you know, but Joe took a lot of risk. He took a chance on, you know, he took a chance on a roof on their head just to get those guys successful because he knew once those kids became successful that he knew once they became successful that they would be on the top. And like I say, when those record deals has happened, he made sure his kids got the most out of those record deals and stuff like that. Now with Motown, he been to their will a little bit on Motown. You know what I'm saying in terms of creative control. You know what I'm saying because they didn't have creative control at Motown. However, as much as Joe Jackson did not like Berry Gordy, as much as he did not like Berry Gordy, that Berry Gordy, Berry Gordy mentored Michael Jackson uh, in his early years. He would ultimately end up uh, he would ultimately end up being mentored by what's the guy's name? Ebony Magazine's Ebony Magazine's founder. His name is Johnson. I want to make sure I get this right. John Johnson. He would be mentored by John Johnson after his falling out with 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 Berry Gordy, which I'm gonna get to later. Yeah. I actually met, you know what? I actually met somebody that worked with Berry Gordy before, and they were talking about how shrewd he was when it came to the business. Definitely hit the like button. I see 3 people up in here. Let's make this bang. Hit the like button. But in spite of Michael, in spite of Joe not liking Michael, Michael was mentored by Berry Gordy, and at some point, at one point, he was considered like more of a father than Joe Jackson was, because Michael was very angry at his dad for those ass whoopings, but he came. They relationship for the most part, but Berry Gordy mentored Michael, and he put Michael on a lot of game. And the game that Michael was being laced with Berry Gordy, because he was like him and Jermaine were the two guys that stayed after the studio with Berry Gordy. Berry Gordy would come in and be like kind of like a father to him. So he allowed that. But he just all the other brothers did not fuck with Berry Gordy. So what Michael was doing was he was keeping an ear to the streets for Joe Jackson. And what ends up happening is Joe Jackson started demanding creative control. And it never happened for the kids, but they still got a good amount of revenue from Motown. And Michael was still getting game, because Berry Gordy taught Michael Jackson publishing rights. He taught him how important it was to write your own songs, how important it is to get a good album copy split. So Michael was learning a lot of game from Berry Gordy. But Berry Gordy, on the flip side of that, Berry Gordy was not allowing the Jackson 5 to get their creative control on. Because at the time at Motown, Smokey Robinson, Marvin Gaye, this is before Rick James even came in the picture. Willie Hutch to a certain degree. Only a handful of Motown guys had creative control. And Joe was demanding that. After their first few albums, he started demanding creative control. And what happened was a lot of the Jackson 5 in the Jackson 5 record sale in recent years was flopping. And then Michael ended up having a solo career as well. So his solo albums outside of the Ben album were not successful at all. And Michael grew tired of Berry Gordy, along with his father. So when the contract of Motown was up, or I should say just before the contract of Motown was up, Joe Jackson was shopping around for record deals. Nobody wanted to give him a fair shake. So what happened was the contract ended up, they ended up leaving Motown. They didn't re-sign with Motown. Motown had filed a lawsuit. They were going to use the name the Jackson 5, but Motown ended up filing a lawsuit against the Jackson family. Yeah, I saw that. But really, the Jacksons would lay the foundations for the DeBarge because they were like the second coming of the Jacksons. Now you can argue the Silvers up in Memphis / LA were the Jackson 5 because he had a similar voice to Michael Jackson, but they was a Jackson 5 knockout. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, Janine. They were a Jackson 5 knockout. The Silvers were good voices. Leon Silver, the oldest sibling, he was pretty good in terms of songwriting for them. But they were, you had several bubblegum groups like the Osmonds and the Silvers, and the Barges were a little bit more mature. And but back to my point, what ended up happening was he got all 5 of his boys, except he got all 5 of his boys. Well, his next 5 boys, Jermaine ends up staying in Motown under pressure. And what would happen is they went into Epic Records. They were in the lobby of Epic Records. And I think one of the assistants at Epic Records, the Epic, and this is how the guy described this. You can listen to this on Showtime because they had a real thing about Michael Jackson. And he talked about how the president of Epic Records, which is now Sony Legacy, Now, the president of Epic Records couldn't believe Michael Jackson and his brothers was inside the lobby of Epic Records. Well, of course, Joe Jackson was present at that particular meeting, and the president of Epic Records came to Michael Jackson. The first question he asked is, "What do you want, Michael?" Now, I think the first two albums, yeah, talking about the DeBarge, in terms of albums, yeah. Yeah, and then they started going to jail and stuff like that. The bar just started going to jail and stuff like that. Yeah. But I'm gonna get to that too, by the way, because Joe Jackson had a hand at that in that situation as well. But when he went to Epic, he asked Michael. I love the DeBarge too. Don't get it twisted. I love me some DeBarge. I loved them when they was when they were Switch, and I loved them when they were when they did their thing. But yeah, I'm gonna get to that. But when he went inside Epic, he asked Michael what he wanted, and I think uh, the first contract, I think they signed a short-term contract, and they got like 35% of the royalties on the album copy. Now, at this time, this is pretty much unheard of. Uh, and they was like they wanted control of what songs they brought to the table and stuff like that. And then I'm thinking, want to say 1977, 78, they would re-sign with Epic Records and have a 40% split of the album copies. They were not only getting a large portion of the record sales, they were getting a big portion of they were getting a big portion of the album sales. So uh, this would also happen. This would also happen on Michael Jackson's solo albums. Michael Jackson ended up having a 40% revenue split, according to Rolling Stone magazine. Around the time of his death, he would end up getting a 40% of his album sales, uh, which would be significant in Michael Jackson's career. Now, Joe Jackson was present for those, because here's the thing, and here's how that correlates with Joe Jackson, because the record executives were so intimidated by Joe Jackson, they knew not to come in and fuck with Joe Jackson. So without that, Joe Jackson would, I mean, Michael would not have as much money as he had now. But that 40% split, let's say you sell, let me get my calculator over here. Let's say, for instance, hypothetical situation. Let's say we're going to throw a hypothetical. Let's say you uh, let's say you sell 8 million album copies, which what out off the wall did, and you take about 40% of that revenue that he gets into. Hold on, excuse me. I got to go to my percentage. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, so he was getting a significant portion. He was getting a significant portion at that time. 10, Yeah, so I can see how he became rich. Yeah, because the record label is the record label. Hold on, 60% of. Yeah, so the record label is gonna make a significant cut as well at that time. And yeah, so the record label was they knew that if they gave him creative control, that Michael Jackson was gonna bring in a lot of revenue. So I can see how Michael Jackson became rich because you take that times 10, 8 million, and that 40% times 10 with off the wall, he's making like $32 million off the record. And that's not included, but please take into account. This is not including the percentage he got to give to Quincy Jones as a producer because he would Quincy Jones played a significant factor in his career too because his voice started to change and a lot of the songs that Motown was giving Michael was not was not was not it didn't coincide with his voice. It didn't translate into big record sales with his voice because Michael Jackson, if you look through the Motown years, before they left Motown, his voice started to change. His voice started to mature. He didn't have the kiddie voice that he did anymore. And that's one of the reasons Michael was pissed off at Barry Gordy, which led to Joe Jackson, not renewing his contract with Motown. You know, because he saw his son's voice changing. They needed a change of production. They were giving the Jackson Five a lot of bubblegum acts and shit like that. And here you go, you got a grown ass Michael Jackson or a person turning into a grown man, voice changing. He needed a producer that could translate into a international superstar, and that's where Quincy Jones come in. Now, I have my criticism of Quincy Jones. I have big criticism of Quincy Jones, but I don't know if Michael Jackson makes a thriller without Quincy Jones. But the 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 tra- but the beginning of Thriller or the beginning of his success came through Joe Jackson, which is why I'm doing a live stream of Joe Jackson. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that's true. I just got to do my research on him. If I'm not mistaken, that's true though. But I know you got jokes right now. But Joe Jackson was the blueprint to him getting that Epic Records deal. Now, around 1979, Joe Jackson would no longer be his manager, but he was still the manager of the group, the Jacksons. He still he still managed the Jacksons. You know what I'm saying? Up until want to say shit. Hold on, give me a second. He managed them for a good minute though. Hold on. I know he managed them. No, he was in the victory tour with those guys. So he was still managing them then because Catherine had to convince him to convince Michael to join the brothers and the Jacksons, and that would be the only album that all six brothers, the Jacksons, the Victory album, they'll be the only album that the Jacksons, all six of the brothers came in. Now, please take in consideration other siblings when they went to Epic Records. Other siblings were featured in some of their albums. You know, this a lot of their albums with Epic. You know, Latoya got her start. Rebe got her start. You know, she had a little hit record called Centipede back in the day. So Joe had all the family, the entire family, basically on records. As a matter of fact, um, Janet is on a few of Off the Wall albums. Yeah, yeah, I remember Reby. Yeah, I remember Reby. Reby is the oldest, so I can't I can't forget the oldest child. But um, Off the Wall featured a little Janet Jackson. If you listen to some of those records closely, you can hear her voice in the background. It's you can't forget the voice. And I'm gonna tell you another secret. Janet Jackson was featured in PYT. If you listen to the bridge of PYT, you hear Janet Jackson's voice. Her voice is like, na, 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 na. You know, my voice is fucked up, but you can hear that session. That's Janet Jackson like there. Na, 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 na. You hear that part? That's Janet Jackson in PYT. You know, it's she's writing the album credits, but you can hear her voice over the other sisters. Um, but Joe played a significant factor in her career because he was funding her albums, her first two albums, which wasn't a hit maker, but it gave her a start. And then around 85 or 86, she would end up firing Joe. She would end up firing Joe as the manager, and I think she hired Michael Jackson's manager as her manager. But that would work in her favor because she had the best up and coming producers in the game at that time, or arguably, and I say arguably because you had Babyface at the time. Quincy was still doing his thing. You know, you had a host of great producers coming out of that game, and then you're going into the New Jack Swing with Teddy Riley and stuff like that. But um, she would end up getting with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and that's pretty much all she wrote in her entire career. You know, and she had a good portion of badass album sales uh, throughout that timeline with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Pretty much most of her albums, her the best of her albums came from Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. That was kind of like a Burt Bacharach and Carol I can't even think of that woman's name, but Burt Bacharach and Dionne Warwick. That was kind of like how their relationship was. So she did a good job. She made a great decision on getting rid of him as a manager. I still would have had him as somebody to make sure nobody don't go around fucking with me, but she it worked out for her because she's damn near a billionaire, especially after this fucking divorce. So I'm not mad at her at all for getting with that damn dude. So getting with that Arab dude and shit, you know. But hold on. Well, yeah, people shitted on him. Yeah, yeah, I remember that album vaguely, very vaguely, because I know Billy Ocean, a up and coming Billy Ocean, wrote a few songs on that album from what I know. Yeah, so up and coming Billy Ocean, he wrote a few albums, and I think she hold on, because I can go to the album discrepancy uh, biography. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. She ended up signing with A&M Records around 1982. Yeah, he was yeah, produced by Renee and Angela Silvers. Yeah, the whole entire that 83 album was overseen by it was overseen by him. And then she wasn't contributing to the songwriting of that because he brought in a host of producers coming in as well too. You had Dream Street. Yeah, yeah. So she was at that point. She had to, for her, she had to make a change at some point. She had to make a change in terms of her direction, the direction of her career. You know, because she was basically, uh, yeah. I took a look at it. Yeah, because it was produced by the Silvers, and it was produced by the Silvers. Yeah, so it was time. It was time for her to get on down. Yeah, I'm looking this up. Renee and Angela say you do. Young Love, the first side of the thing. Yeah. So it was it was time for her to like the album in 1986 said. It was time for her to get control. Shit. She needed control for real. She definitely needed control. Yeah, she definitely needed control. So her leaving Joe, she needed to. She needed control. If she didn't get control of that situation, she would have been another teeny bopper, for lack of a better word. Because if you look up all the female artists, not named, yeah, okay, I'm gonna get into that. Okay, but with her, when she married DeBarge, it was a short marriage. Hold on, shit, I almost hit the wrong button. I am sorry, guys. I almost hit the wrong button. Hold on, because I like to have my receipts with me when I'm dropping signs about people. But with with Janet, when she married the DeBarge, I want to say it was. Give me a second, because I get those DeBarges mixed up all the time. James DeBarge, yeah. When she married James DeBarge in 1984, her career wasn't where she wanted to be. Her career wasn't where she wanted it to be. But what ended up happening was, in some of this can be young love, yeah. From what I understand, this is nothing I can prove. From what I understand, that she had, I think James DeBarge, from what I understand, introduced her to drugs. And if I'm not mistaken, one of those brothers, I want to say Chico, got caught with drugs along with Janet Jackson. This is what I heard through the grapevine. This is nothing I can prove. So if any of the Jacksons, because Jackie, the oldest son, actually follows me on Instagram. From what I understand, she was caught with drugs along with James DeBarge and Chico had to do time for that. Yeah, yeah. From what I understand, I'm not saying this is true, but from what I understand, Chico got caught in the rapture because Chico at this time had some hits coming out like "Talk to Me," Baby, Rainy Night, which was covered by which was covered by Memphis group named Main Ingredient. He covered that song, which was produced by Brown Mark. So Chico was going to be on the up and up, but what ended up happening was he had to take a jail sentence for getting caught with those drugs. But in that rapture, what would end up happening is, from what I understand, Joe found out she was doing drugs, and he had the marriage annulled. He forced that marriage to be annulled very fast because they was only married for roughly they was married for roughly 14 months, and she was 18, so she was vulnerable. And James was a drug head. You know, James was a drug head, so so it was like, and let's not get it twisted. A lot of those DeBarges was drug heads, and Joe knew that. Yeah, you're welcome. If I'm wrong about something, please let me know, because I mean, if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit this. But I know this. I know this is what I heard through the grapevine. Like, this is what I'm saying through the grapevine. I've heard this through the grapevine. I don't. In that particular situation with Janet being on drugs, I don't know. But I know Joe Jackson. This is indisputably Joe had that marriage annulled very quick. He was definitely a factor in that being annulled. Because he was definitely not going to let his baby girl get into no fuck shit marriage. He was definitely not going to let his baby girl get into no fuck shit marriage. So he took control of that situation and told her, "Look, baby, you're gonna have to get a divorce," and that's what ended up happening. So, but but Joe, but yeah, over the years, because this is another thing I forgot to address as well. He also had an outside child. Yeah, he was a dope fiend. James DeBarge, that is. A lot of those DeBarges were dope fiends. Yeah, damn near all the motherfuckers were dope fiends, damn near. From Bunny on down, goddamn it, shit. But when the Jacksons found out that they had another sister that was not from Catherine, that kind of put another strain on the marriage. And I think they didn't find out till years later. Michael and the rest of the family didn't find out till years later. And that put a lot of strain on the relationships. And Michael, Michael, I don't think he was blatantly disrespectful about it, but he was very upset with him because you wouldn't know. Say, well, now, yeah. And Michael, he would still honor his father, be like, "I love you, Catherine. I love you, Joe," at all his concerts and all that other good shit. But he was upset at him for a while. Now, with this being said, Michael was still financially taking care of Mike, Joe, and Catherine. Uh, he was still financially taking care of Joe at this time. Even with their relationship being strained as it is, he still financially supported them. And they were actually still living. Catherine and Joe were still living with them up until, I want to say, 86. About in the middle of the 80s, he kind of went his own way. He kind of gave him a house. So, but he was still financially supporting him for a long time. This is what I know, because there were actually a phone conversation of Michael. Um, there was a phone conversation years ago talking about he was tired of his father asking for money when he's already giving his dad money. You know what I'm saying? He actually said this on a phone interview. If you can go, you have to go on YouTube to find this. I don't know if it's still up, but he had a 1991 conversation with his dad. I mean, with a friend of Michael, and she recorded. He didn't know his friend was recording this, and I don't think he would wanted that recorded. But he was pissed off at his dad. He was like, "I'm tired of my dad asking for money." And also, Joe was going into a lot of debt as well. At some point, I think he got it straightened out at the years because I think it was a real ugly argument that they had, uh, and that probably explains why he's not on the wheel. But Joe was a bad spender as well, because Joe would get with a lot of these young girls and be buying some pussy and all that, for lack of a better term. I have to call it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? So Joe was a bad spender, and hold on, yeah, yeah, yeah. He was definitely against that marriage as well. But Joe went into some financial trouble, and I think he had a it was a bad conversation. They had a real tough conversation. And one thing about Leos are loving people, but a lot of Leos, and I'm not shitting on Leos because a lot of people I'm close to are Leos. My late grandmother, my martial art instructor, my Sensei Terrence, they're good people, but they have a bad problem with spending money. This is not directed at all Leos because I know some they can manage money like they can manage some holes on the track, for lack of a better term. But a lot of them have a bad spending habit, very bad spending habits, and Joe was one of them. And even though Michael supported him throughout the years, uh, was supporting him financially throughout the years. Yeah, yeah. So you know where I'm coming from. You know where I'm coming from on this. So he had some he had bad habits. So Michael was getting tired of that because I think he took out some loans too as well. But Joe got back on track throughout the years. Joe got back on track as well though. Now with Latoya crazy ass, Latoya Jackson. Let me scroll through my articles because I want to be accurate. Latoya was married to a dude named Jack Gordon. Um, she was married to a dude named Jack Gordon, and Jack Gordon had a history of criminal allegations, and he was known for bribing people, and he was known for doing a lot of fuck shit, you know. But and this is one of the few people Joe Jackson didn't go out his way to. Yeah, this is one of the few people Joe Jackson didn't really too much fuck with. Because Joe always suspected him of having a gun or having mob connections because of his history. And Jack Gordon was very abusive. And what ended up happening with Latoya is she accused Joe of physically and sexually abusing her. Now she would retract his statements down the line, but Jack Gordon coerced her into saying a lot of fuck shit. Like she even came out and said that she believed her her brother Michael Jackson was a child molester. She even came out and said this before. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, with yep, he had associations with the mafia. Okay, Wikipedia is telling me this. He had links with the Genovese family as well as mobsters in Russia, according to Wikipedia. Yes, he was a hold on. Yes, he was a white guy, but he was linked to mob bosses, and which is what Joe Jackson suspected, because this is what Wikipedia is saying. He was connected to some of the Genoveses and the Russian mob. Sorry about that, guys. Because he was a pretty he had money in his own right. He had money in his own right, and um, he was so abusive that he was so abusive that that Randy, before Randy went crazy as cat shit, uh, had to send her money to fly to New York, and that's how she ended up getting away from him. Now I heard another story that uh, she ended up calling her brother. The Wikipedia story said she ended up being flied out, but I've heard another story to where he ended up meeting her halfway across their neighborhood because she was staying in a pretty upscale neighborhood, and he met her halfway across the neighborhood, and he ended up driving her out of there. But we do know that Randy played a factor in her getting the fuck away from this crazy, this cat shit white dude named Jack Gordon. We know this as a fact. Randy was involved either way. So, but Joe never got involved with Jack Gordon because that was one of the few guys that Joe wasn't stiff with. But other than that, he protected his kids for the most part. But Latoya did a lot of crazy cat shit, and according to Wikipedia, she said her final straw with Jack Gordon is he was gonna have her do porn, and she was like, "Oh hell no," So, but Joe always protected his children, even when after Michael died, he always protected his image. You didn't talk bad about Michael. I don't give a damn how bad, how big of blood they had between each other. You did not talk about Michael or any of his children. With not when Joe Jackson is president. Joe Jackson was always protective of his image. He was always um, representing him. Now, Michael came forward talking about how abusive he was. That's either here or there. Hell, my grandma whooped ass like that. If you ask anybody in my family who was raised by my grandmama was the female version of fucking Joe Jackson. You know, my grandmama was the fucking female version of Joe Jackson, and my grandma would whoop ass just like Joe Jackson. I know because I was at the receiving end of a grandma ass whooping. And I never will forget that shit. But I love my grandma to death. I used to love going down to that country ass town. And we can truly say without Joe, they wouldn't have went nowhere. They need Michael, in spite of everything y'all say about Joe. I'm talking about the fuck shit critics, not y'all, because y'all understand. But in spite of all the shit that he went through, the Jackson the Jackson family wouldn't have been went nowhere without the motivation and the risk taking of Joe Jackson. Without him, they would not be the Jackson Five. Without them, they would not be the Jacksons. Without them, you don't have Michael as the greatest pop star of all time. You do not have Janet Jackson, who is in the top five biggest revenue generating concert performer out there. Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. Michael, I could talk any day, every day about Michael because that's how much I follow Michael. Michael Prince, I can go all day with those motherfuckers. You know, because one thing about Michael as a performer, those ass whoopings did some good because that dude would perform his ass off. He would perform so hard, he would go so hard in the paint performing that Michael would have the fucking audience tired from the damn performances and shit like that. You would be tired from a Michael Jackson fucking concert. You would be fading from a fucking Michael Jackson concert. You would be exhausted from all the non-stop performance of fucking Michael Jackson. I mean, Michael Jackson was that person that had that factor. The closest person to Michael as a performer, and this is debatable. This is very debatable. I would say Prince and probably a Beyonce. You know, you might not be a Beyonce fan, but as a performer, she does her thing. And I'm just saying, and when I say close, that when I say Beyonce is close to him, it's a huge gap between that closeness. It's kind of like comparing Brazil soccer to fucking the soccer of Argentina. Brazil's the best, but you can argue Argentina is like the second best or third best or whatever you want to call it. So it's a huge gap between the two. It's a huge gap between those two. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Because at a at a Michael Jackson concert, him being a Virgo, Virgos are perfectionists, but his discipline was instilled by Joe Jackson. Michael Jackson wasn't that much of an instrumentalist, but he knew what it takes to make a song. He knew what the drummer needed to do to make the drum sound beautiful. He knew what the guitarist needed to do. He knew what the bassist needed to do. He knew what the synthesizer slash keyboardist needed to do. All of that came from the discipline of Joe Jackson. Michael Jackson didn't write songs on pen and paper. He recorded it on a he recorded his songs the old school way. Speak you crazy as hell. Michael Jackson stole my girlfriend, so I took his lunch. Shit. Oh yeah, most definitely. And there's a gap between him and Prince. Because I had the opportunity to go to a Prince concert years ago, and he rocks the house too. Don't get me wrong. I missed work because of Prince, but I wish I had seen Michael Jackson though. And the thing about Michael Jackson and Prince in terms of concert, if you ever been to a Michael Jackson and Prince concert, what they both have in common is their songs sound like they came out the damn studio, and that is even with the backing band, with the horn section, with the violin section, whatever, dog. If you go to their concert, it sounds like it's out of the studio, fresh out of the studio, with no kind of mastering or anything. That's how my sister's a Sagittarius. My sister's a Sagittarius. Sagittarius are good people. You know, y'all freaks. I can tell y'all that. Oh, I done had Sagittarius in my life too. So, but Sagittarius are good people. They make the best of friends. I'll say that. Because I have a couple of female friends, and my two female friends are Sagittarius, and I'm very close to them. You know, and I get a lot of game from Sagittarius. They're very wise people. Is Morris Day of the time? Morris Day in the time is a Sagittarius. Jimi Hendrix is a Sagittarius. One of my favorite boxers, Mike McCallum, is a Sagittarius. They Sagittarius make a lot of great adjustments and stuff like that. They know how to listen. They know how to take heed to practical advice. Sometimes they can be overly optimistic. I don't like using the word overconfident because I don't believe in a thing called overconfident. But I do think you can be overly optimistic on something. So they can be uh, dreamers, for lack of a better term. Jamie Foxx is a Sagittarius as well. Samuel L. Jackson is a Sagittarius. Yeah. So, um, but yeah, Michael Jackson's concerts would sound like it's fresh out the kitchen of the studio, and a lot of that came from Joe. I don't think. Then again, he probably did it, and might not have took credit for it, but he knew what it took to make his son the best pop artist of all time, the king of pop. He's the king of pop because of his father. His father instilled the discipline to become a perfectionist. And it takes a while to become a true perfectionist. You know what I'm saying? Now, perfectionist can be a good and bad thing. Perfection can be good if what you do, you know it backwards, forward, and in your sleep. But it can be a bad thing if you worry and fret about it to the point to where it drives you insane. So that's what I mean by perfectionist. But he was so much of a perfectionist, he knew to take for his entire concert band. You can listen to any of his live concerts. It sounds like in the studio. And if it didn't sound exactly like in the studios, it's damn near on it sounded good to you when you went to the concert. You felt like you was there when he first recorded it. That's how Joe instilled that shit in him. Oh, I'm a Cancer. I just had a birthday yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, but a couple of days ago. I'm a Cancer. I'm crazy as hell. Can be very moody, but we can be very Cancers can be very ambitious people. When we put our mind on something, ain't shit stopping us. Once we put our mind on something, sometimes we can live in a dream world, but once we get out that dream world and wake our dumb asses up to reality, we become the best of the best. We can make great friends. You know, not too many friends that I know in my lifetime I've had a falling out with. That's because even if, you know, right or wrong or right or wrong or how bad we have our problems, I can still be a friend to you. I'm going to still look out for you. That's the thing about us cancers, you know. We can be emotional, be in our feelings, but when we get out our feelings, you know, hey, we do our thing. That's why I continue to study uh, history and continue to do the things I do and do my YouTube thing because I'm very ambitious. I want to be independent. Ultimately, I don't want to continue work this slave job that I work all the time. And cancers are known as some of the best businessmen. Some of your best businessmen, hook or crook, legit, or never to quit. You know what I'm saying? Shit, they're cancers. Richard Branson, Rockefeller, like them or love them. Shit, I can go all day with cancers. Sheila Johnson of BET. Uh, some of your biggest money makers, most of your billionaires is probably Cancer. Cancer's in Scorpio. You know, a lot of your people on this zodiac sign. Oh, thank you. Surely appreciate you. Love the birthday wish. You know what I'm saying? But getting back on topic though, man. Yeah, Joe was very concerned with Jack Gordon. Um, he was very concerned with Jack Gordon, so he didn't want to intervene with that. But I'm going too far backwards. But no, his work ethic came from his father. His work ethic came from his father, and oh, thank you, Z, thank you. His work ethic came from his father, and he took his work ethic to his grave, just like his dad did. His dad had a nonstop work ethic. His dad was always looking for talent, because even after his kids didn't have a career, he didn't manage his kids no more. He still looked for local talents. He still found ways to make money and stuff like that. You know, he still dedicated his time to the music industry. Joe did, and he still looked after his family. He looked after his family even when they didn't weren't at the best of terms. And he let Quincy Jones know, hey, you was always jealous of him, and you wouldn't have been known as the greatest producer of all time without Michael Jackson. And that's debatable. That's debatable. I say, I say from my opinion, yes, but again, from a realist, from a realist, from my realist perspective, that's debatable. But my opinion, I can agree with him to a certain degree, Joe to a certain degree. But I'll say this: Michael needed Quincy Jones as much as Quincy Jones needed Michael. I'm going to say it just like that. I'm not going to sit up here and say one didn't need the other because they both needed each other to take their careers to the next level. It's kind of like having, it's kind of like having, it's kind of like having Kobe Bryant. You can argue Kobe Bryant is the second greatest player, third greatest player, fifth greatest player. But those first three championships, that nigga needed Shaq. And you can argue Shaq needed Kobe. So you couldn't have one without the other. It's just one was just leading the fort more than the other. Somebody had to take the lead, and once Shaq left the fort, then Kobe had to take over. So it is what it is. So with that being said, Joe Joe took to his grave his a work ethic that was unmatched by others, and his kids became a millionaire behind his work ethic. That's one thing about Leos. Like them or love them, they have work ethic, especially if they believe in themselves. Leos are some of the most confident people out there. But with that Leo work ethic is probably the most unstoppable work ethic around, because when they put their mind on something, they believe in it, whether it's gonna fail or go to the sale. They're gonna have a nonstop work ethic. And those kids benefited from that work ethic, even including Catherine, his wife, which is why Catherine never divorced Joe. Catherine didn't divorce Joe because she knew whether Michael was funding him or he funded himself, he um, he's gonna find a way to make it in life, with or without her. And Joe was so fucking strong. He was so much of a man's man. Because Joe was the man's man. Like him or love him, I don't give a fuck who likes it or not. Joe was an old school, a classic old school man. He was so much of a man's man that he didn't want his children at the end of his life. This is what the reports say. He didn't, and I can believe this particular report because it is what it is. Joe was one of his old school traditional men. Joe did not want his children to see him at his weakest point. He did not want to see guests come to check on him while he's sick. Yeah, I agree. No one gave him the respect he deserved. Joe deserved every bit of his respect because his work ethic. Without that fucking work ethic, they asses they would have Without that man's work ethic, they would have been shit. Let's just keep this 110. They would not have been shit. Those kids would not have. Those kids would have probably been fucking criminals. You know. Yes, he had his extramarital affairs, and yes, and yes, yes, Joe wasn't the most faithful guy in the world. But the thing is, Joe, Joe, Catherine really loved Joe. I'm gonna say this. Catherine loved Joe so much. Catherine loved Joe so much. Catherine loved Joe so much that the woman that Joe was cheating with, her and Janet, this is verifiable. Her and Janet actually went over to the woman's house. From what I understand, she went over the woman named Cheryl Terrell house. I think it's Cheryl Terrell. I think it was one of his side pieces. They actually went over because what happened in that movie in the Jackson Five when Joe was on the phone with his side piece, Catherine driving off after she found out Joe cheated on her and she hit the nigga with some candy or some shit like that. Because Joe told her to give him some pecan ice cream. She loved Joe so much that Catherine and Janet Jackson, we're talking about maybe a 16, 15-year-old Janet Jackson, still on, I don't know if she was still on Good Times or not at this time. I don't know. They went down there and whooped that woman's ass. And this is verifiable. This is how you know this is how you know fucking this is how you know Catherine Jackson was about that life. She went down there and whooped. She went down to this woman's house or one of his side pieces. I'm not sure if it was Cheryl or not, but we do know she went down to one of his side pieces' house and whooped her ass with Janet Jackson. Oh man, she whooped this motherfucker's ass. She went down there and she's like, bitch, you ain't finna take my nigga. Shit. Yeah, she went down there. She went down there and whooped that woman's ass. She went down there and whooped that woman's ass with Janet. But again, both of those guys were disciplinarians, and Catherine has actually came out and said on several different occasions that Joe whooped ass like he should have. And also, let's take into account as well for those people that live in the South or that's for those people that oh yeah man y'all people sleep on how and if she and when she goes to her grave I'm gonna say mention this again because usually when one dies at this age the other one's not too far behind and I think it's gonna take a lot out of her Miss Catherine. Unfortunately, this is going to take a lot out of her because when you be with somebody that long, even if you move on to another person, that takes a lot out of you. My granddaddy was divorced from my grandma for like 30 some years, and when she died, it took a lot out of my grandfather. So, you know, she's been my grandmother's been dead for 15 years, but I can see it highly affects her. So I don't see her living much past much longer. And I suggest the Jackson family go check on that woman. You know, when one goes like this, especially in their 90s or 80s and 90s, one is about another one's going to be not too far from behind it. You know, but and I hope she stays with us a little bit longer. But we know, you know, a lot of times that's not the case. If you married to somebody that long, you know, even if you split up with that person, them dying just takes something out of you. You're ready to go right behind them. But contrary, LeBron signs with the Lakers. Yes, I definitely know that for sure. And he probably gonna buy Joe Jackson's house too up in Las Vegas too. So, but contrary to the way Joe Jackson whooped ass, a lot of the disciplinarians were women back in the day. Because most of the old school people that I've actually talked to were, you know, they've only remembered a handful of ass whoopings they got from their father. And if you in south in the down and if you lived in the south, if you was a southern boy, you didn't get too many ass whoopings from your daddy. Yeah. I mean, my grandmother died 15 years ago, and I surely appreciate you, Janine. Definitely appreciate you, Janine. But and I'm blessed to still have my grandfather. By the way, my grandfather's still here, but that's taking a lot out of him, though, for sure. But I should definitely appreciate the condolences. But contrary to popular belief and what Joe Jackson was, a lot of the ass whoopings came from the mother. And if you got an ass whooping from your daddy, or you didn't get too many ass whoopings from your daddy, because the ass whoopings daddy gave you, it put a scar on you, and it put a lot of fear in you. So daddies didn't have to put hands on in their daughters. Yeah, uh, daddies did not have to put a lot of give their kids a lot of ass whooping, or didn't have to be the main disciplinarian. But Joe Jackson was the rare guy in terms of ass whoopings. Now, you respected your dad like you did Joe Jackson. Let's not get it twisted. It's just Joe wanted his kids to be successful, so he was the main ass kicker in the household. But again, Catherine was the silent ass whooper in that household, because we got to think about it. These were Jehovah Witnesses in the family. These were Jehovah Witnesses. They were very strict religious family. And if you look up extensively outside of Wikipedia, in the unauthorized biography or the authorized biography, it always said those two guys, Catherine and Joe Jackson, or Catherine Spruce, which is her maiden name, were strict disciplinarians. But people do not talk about the ass whoopings that Catherine gave. They totally dismissed it, and they used that as leverage to shit on Joe Jackson. But Mama Catherine, shit. But the mamas back in the day were the disciplinarians. Because every old man, old woman I've talked to, people that was born before 1970, always said that daddy only whooped me one time and he felt bad about whooping my ass. But I never knew not to piss off my dad. Now, there were some households was literally tit for tat. You had some households that if your mama whooped your ass, your dad came right behind it. If your dad whooped your ass, your mama came right behind it. There were some households like that. I love your jokes. Captain used to whoop my ass when I came home with Michael after detention. I love your sense of humor. But yeah, when mama whooped ass, daddy came right behind them, and vice versa. There were some households like that. So, you know, contrary to popular belief, the women were the main disciplinarians. Yeah, 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 and you got some men that don't touch their children at all, but their children still give the same respect to their father as they would a Joe Jackson. There are some men that never had to whoop their children, you know, but that don't mean you disrespected mama. You know what I'm saying? So Joe whooped ass like he needed to whoop ass because he understood the importance of success. You know what I'm saying? Like another disciplinarian, another disciplinarian was Tiger Woods' father, older father. When when he started out as a child, mama was the main ass whooper. But what ended up happening was when he learned to play golf through his dad, Tiger Woods. I'm speaking of Tiger Woods, Eldrick Tiger Woods. I can't think of his dad's name. What's his dad's name? Tiger Woods. And please note that Tiger Woods is a coon, but I will give props where props is due. A lot of his success came through a lot of his Earl Woods. Yeah, Earl Woods. Okay, yeah. So, but when Tiger ended up becoming successful, his dad was pretty tough on him. His dad had a similar, pretty much similar to Joe Jackson thing because he learned how to play golf through his father. You know, when men get up in age, they start learning how to play golf. You know, especially old black men. And a lot of times, you have to be an old black man to really pay attention to golf. You know, so he used to give he used to give Tiger that work. You know, he used to give Tiger that work, man. So it was a similar situation. So, yeah, now yes, Tiger Woods is a cool with that capital Asian bullshit, but and, and and not to diss Joe, not to piss on his grave, he did Joe kind of did a little bit of eye bucking a little bit in his own right. I'm not gonna go as far as calling him a coon, but he did do some eyes bucking. I ain't gonna lie to you, But other than that, his, you know, we should respect the man for his work ethic and getting. Uh, we should respect the man's work ethic for what he did for his children. His work ethic and his love for his kids is unmatched. You know, and a lot of people can take note from that man. Well, he was definitely a great motivator for his children. Yes, those kids were scared of him to his grave, and yes, he didn't want his children to see him sick the way he was. Or that's what I believe because that's what the report said that he didn't want his family to come see him in a in a sick state the way he was. Oh man, you're not 31 and 29. You don't have no daughters 31 and 29. Come on now. You got jokes. You probably got uh you probably got a daughter 1 and 9, but not no 31 and 29. Come on now. You have a girl 1 and 9. You got jokes today. But what was I saying before? You got jokes. You got jokes. But yeah, man. But yeah, Joe's work ethic was unmatched though, and he was determined to be successful. And if he wasn't successful individually speaking, he made sure his kids became successful. Everybody in that household had some taste of success. You didn't hear about his kids going to jail. You didn't hear about his kids end up on a sex scandal. outside of Michael, which was total bullshit. That child molestation case was 100% bullshit. You know, yes, Joe took away a lot of Michael's childhood in terms of having him perpetually perform nonstop from a little child to an adult. You know, but it it explains that he, regardless of what, regardless of who, whether it was Reby, Latoya, if all those kids had some type of success in their life, they can't say they didn't make millions. They can't say they never you know, dad didn't do enough to make sure they were successful. He made sure all those kids, yeah. Ha ha, Z is one of your babies. Ah, so you from England? Oh man, you got jokes here. You got jokes here. Are you really? Is that true, Z? Oh shit. No, New York. Okay, just making sure. Just making sure. Yeah, because I know he's an African. He's English of African descent. Yeah. So you got some African in you too. But yeah, Mr. Joe, Mr. Joe Jackson made sure all of his you know what? Hold on, hold on. Yeah, she gets the Coon Slapper Awards. The Coon was a Coon Slapper ranch. Yeah. You start seeing some cooning up in here, just start slapping motherfuckers with it. Yeah, she earned it, man. I ain't gonna lie. You know. Yeah, get your coon slapper. Slap! Get your ass up out of here. So yeah, that's what I call it. My rank is the coon slapper, the troll trouncer, the white supremacist whooper. But in closing though, no matter how old his kids were, he wanted all his kids to be successful. Now, Michael Jackson and Janet was on a whole other level, but he wanted them all to taste some kind of success. And no matter if you like them or love them, you know, everybody agreed in the chat agrees that, you know, he wasn't the perfect father, but he was the necessary father to their success. And like I say, without him, they wouldn't have went nowhere. Oh, most definitely. You riding with me this long, shit. You may as well go. I might as well give you the slapper. You know what I'm saying? So see some trolls up in my chat, just slap their ass with it. You know, anytime I live stream. Yeah, I do a lot of cussing in my live stream, so you know. But I promise you, I'm gonna keep it real and be as respectful as possible. But you know, that's just me. But yeah, man, he he wanted all his kids to be successful, and he did everything he could to make sure uh, he did everything they can to make sure that all of them tasted some form of success. So we can learn. Everybody can learn a lot from Joe Jackson. I'm not saying you got to beat the hell out your kids like Joe Jackson. I'm not saying that, but have the willpower to will your kids to success. You can will your kids to success the same way he did. You ain't got to be that extreme, but if it's necessary to do that, then hell, do it. You know. So I'm not knocking Joe under any circumstances, other than some of his tap dancing. He did a little tap dancing, and I'm not gonna get into that because I want to respect the dead. But definitely, Joe was the necessary asset to the Jackson family. So uh, again, my condolences goes out to the entire family, Latoya, Rebe, Catherine, Jackie, Jermaine, Marlon, Randy, and Janet, and the host of grandchildren and great grandchildren he has. Because he has so many grandchildren, it's crazy. So once again, this your boy, live and direct, in full effect after 8:32. Y'all already know how I do. Good night.